This is one of my favorite, you asked me what I love of Dylan Thomas, was Christmas Town, and I think I referenced it in my speech tonight. But this sums up life to me. I could see the lights in the windows of all the other houses on our hill and hear the music rising from them up the long, steadily falling night. I turned the gas down, I got into bed, I said some words to the clothes in holy darkness, and then I slept. Dylan Thomas. That's how you write.
Tonight is the launch of the international programme for the Dylan Thomas 100, and I think what tonight has certainly shown is just how broad my grandfather's reach is across the world. It's huge, and just it's almost the rest of the world telling people in Wales about the poetry and the words and how they tell the world about the landscapes, the sea, the people, all the different eccentricities of the Welsh people.
Do not go gentle into that good night. Old age should burn and rave at close of day. Rage, rage against the dying.
How did you first get introduced to Dylan Thomas?
Oh wow. I was introduced to Dylan Thomas by the music of Bob Dylan. I was curious about who he was. I looked up his life, found that he had named himself after Dylan Thomas. This is when, over 20 years ago when I was in my 20s. And I was like, well, who's this man Dylan Thomas? And then I saw, his work and his life, and saw that he had influenced Dylan, the Beat Generation poets, John Lennon and Paul McCartney, the Beatles, and God knows so many other people. So that's how I got introduced to him, and I was fascinated. I was also struck by his life in New York City, the 4 tours that he did in New York, including the last one, the fateful one, where he died in New York in 1953. And being a young writer in New York City myself at that time, I was wild and reckless, I will admit that, and there was something very edgy about Dylan Thomas, in spite of how he died, that drew me to him, and just his poetry. It was powerful. I felt sadness in his poetry, but also connected to me to it is that there was a lot of surrealism and a lot of magic in his work, and there's a lot of that in African American culture, where I come from in the States, and so all of those things kind of made me feel a deep connection to Dylan Thomas.
Oh, I only locked the door because I don't want George Ring to come in. He put scent all over his underclothes. Did you know that? Passing cloud. That's what we call it. Passing cloud.
But you distrust her prettiness because of
How do you feel about his work living on kind of far beyond his life and kind of affecting so many people, not even in Wales specific, but America and Australia and all these countries?
I think that's the beauty of when words can be written down. They are there forever. You've got them there as a legacy, and it is the words that inspired the Beat Generation, inspired Bob Dylan, inspired the Beatles, and there's not many other poets who 100 years after they were born can be recognised across the world.
How do you find playing a piece written from such an iconic man's life? Do you find that difficult or more empowering?
It's quite a new experience really to perform a piece which is so closely connected with, Dylan's life or somebody's life, and from my point of view, it's just really important to me that I interpret it in the right way, and that I put across the ideas that Chris has put into the piece already to describe these various bits of his life, and so it's preparing for it in a bit of a different way really. You really have to know your stuff about him and really sort of understand, be in his mind really. When performing the piece so that you can kind of get it across in the right way. So I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be a really good thing for me to sort of learn and grow with this process of learning this piece, that's so close to Dylan Thomas.
Dylan's words are so rich from we've heard so much tonight about the words, the meanings and like this rich tapestry. From a composer's point of view, I mean, it's just, there's so much information there that you can take and translate into music. Dylan's writing basically maps out what I'm going to write already as a composer, and then working with other fantastic musicians who can realise these words and bring it into a piece and hopefully tell a story the same way as Dylan did with every single piece of writing that he did.
Could you elaborate on the process of writing this piece?
Of course. So the way it's sketched out, this evening's performance was basically a snapshot in amongst the whole work. The work is going to be a 25-minute work that we're going to perform first in America, and it's going to be for solo harp. The harp actually represents Dylan as a character. The harp is so symbolic of Wales, the lyricalness of the instrument and everything about it really, I think, encapsulates what Dylan's about and what Dylan is to Wales. That will be accompanied by a string section, a small string section, and a choir, of course, such a national part of Wales. The work will be in 4 movements. The first movement shows Dylan's time in Wales, his childhood, his home life, where that inspiration of the landscape of Wales really came from. The second movement will be the time that he met Caitlin, his wife, who's an Irish dancer. So we're looking at this relationship, which was really fiery. It's fantastic. I mean, musically, I'm so looking forward to showing this in music. The third movement is when Dylan returned back to Swansea after the war, when Swansea was just hit with this blitz and the decimation that was there, and also at the same time, the loss of his father. So it's quite a dark sounding sort of soundscape. And the final movement we see where Dylan spent the last part of his life, which was in America, and more predominantly New York. So in the piece tonight we heard some of that hustle and bustle of New York, and also one of the underlying things that was happening there was a big breathing problem that Dylan had. And it sort of chokes up the music, this breathing problem takes over, and in our piece tonight we heard this most wonderful effect on the harp where we can almost visualise Dylan's last breath.
Do you find, because it's had such a profound effect on you, do you find yourself imitating or even influenced by Dylan Thomas in your own works?
Without question. I don't know how anyone, myself included, could study Dylan Thomas's work, read his work, and not be touched by him in some way. Even just being here in Wales and, going to his house and where he was born, going to the museum that is a tribute to him in Swansea, all over again, I'm influenced by him. I can't wait to get back to New York City and get back to writing, because I'm like, man, there's things I wasn't even thinking about in terms of how he thought that really is affecting what I want to do in my next wave of writing, including this memoir that I'm working on about my childhood. I'm thinking about the things that he saw as a child and how he used his imagination, and that's going to filter into my work now. I guarantee that, even at this stage in my writing career.
In 1933, a girl was pulling at a bottle on the little finger on your left hand while you looked down her dress. It will last longer than all your poems and troubles.
Take him up to the bathroom then and put some soap on it, and mind it's only his bottle.
What do you find about his writing style in specific that you are drawn to?
Some of the things that I love about Dylan Thomas's writing style, just his use of metaphor, like we just heard tonight, her mouth open like a flower, he was a real poet. Even though he might not believe in strict verse form, he did have internal rhymes. He did use very descriptive language. And I like that. I grew up loving that kind of work. I didn't know him in high school. I didn't know him as a child. I got Edgar Allan Poe and Shakespeare and folks like that. And to me, he's very much in the tradition of those kind of great writers. When I read him, I'm like, this is as great as the stuff I read by Chaucer or Dickens. It's very important work. And that's what got me. I love writers like Dylan Thomas who just know how to use language very effectively. And it just sings. It's musical. That's what I love about it.
Do you have a specific line or a verse or even a play in general that kind of is your favourite or the one you love the most?
The poem I love the most is called Through the Green Fuse Drives a Flower, and that really looks at how nature and life and death all link together, and that was written very early on. My grandfather wrote that when he was very young, and it really, at times you don't fully understand what it's all about, but it's really played with the language and explored. So I love that poem. I also like sort of looking at snippets of Under Milkwood, like the two-storied houses where it's played around those double meanings. So obviously the houses are 2 stories, but there's also 2 stories in the house. So one is what people see on the outside, but also what's going on inside. I also like the broadcast. There's one on Larn where he says he gets off the bus and doesn't get back on again, and just it shows the eccentricities of the different characters in the place and how, even though they're all a bit different, he loves them just the same.